The marble floor of the Okonkwo mansion was cold beneath Adanna's knees as she scrubbed, but it was the coldness in Madam Chioma's voice that made her blood freeze. "Look at him, Adanna. Look at this useless thing I'm forced to call my husband." Adanna kept her eyes down, her heart pounding. She had worked as a maid in this Lagos mansion for only 3 months, but she had learned quickly that when Madam Chioma was in one of her moods, silence was survival. "I said look at him." Chioma's Prada heels clicked closer. "Let me show you what 20 years of marriage has given me. A cripple. A burden. A man who can't even stand on his own 2 feet. Adanna's eyes reluctantly lifted to see Chief Emeka Okonkwo sitting in his wheelchair by the window, his face a mask of quiet dignity despite the tears sliding down his weathered cheeks. The morning sun highlighted the gray in his hair, the expensive silk of his traditional Igbada doing nothing to hide how his once powerful frame had withered since the accident 3 years ago. "Chioma, please." Chief Emeka's voice was barely a whisper. "Not in front of the staff." "Staff?" Chioma laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "She's a maid, Emeka. A poor village girl who cleans our toilets. Why should I care what she sees? In fact, let her see everything. Let her see how the great Chief Emeka Okonkwo, the man who once controlled half the oil contracts in Nigeria, now pisses himself and needs his wife to sign every document because his hands shake too much to hold a pen." What happened next would haunt Adanna forever. Chioma walked to her husband's wheelchair, and with a swift, vicious movement, she tipped it forward. Chief Emeka crashed to the floor, his cry of pain echoing through the vast living room. His legs, useless since the car accident that had nearly killed him, twisted at an unnatural angle. "Madam, no." Adanna dropped her scrub brush and rushed forward, but Chioma's hand shot out, stopping her. "Touch him and you're fired. Let him crawl. Let him remember what he is now." But something in Chief Emeka's eyes as he looked up at his wife wasn't pain. It was something else. Something darker. Something knowing. "You'll regret this, Chioma," he said quietly, his voice suddenly steady despite lying broken on the floor. "Everything you've done. Everything you think I don't know. It's all going to come crashing down." Chioma's face went pale for just a second before her mask of cruelty returned. More empty threats from an empty man. "Adanna, call Dr. Nwosu. Tell him my husband had another one of his falls. And remember what you saw here today. Remember that loyalty to this household means loyalty to me, not to this broken thing on the floor." As Adanna scrambled for her phone with shaking hands, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. On the floor, partially hidden beneath Chief Emeka's fallen body, was a small recording device, its red light blinking steadily. Chief Emeka saw her notice it. His eyes met hers, and he gave the slightest shake of his head. A warning. A secret. That night, as Adanna lay on her small bed in the servants' quarters, she couldn't sleep. She didn't know that in exactly 72 hours, Chief Emeka would be dead, Madam Chioma would be under arrest, and the recording device would reveal secrets that would tear apart one of Lagos's most powerful families. She didn't know that she, a poor girl from Enugu who had come to Lagos with nothing but hope and a primary school certificate, would become the key witness in a case that would shock the entire nation. And she definitely didn't know that the man she had watched suffer on that marble floor was not the victim everyone thought he was, but a player in a game far more dangerous than she could imagine. The Okonkwo family's darkest secrets were about to explode into the light, and nothing would ever be the same again. But to understand how it all fell apart, we need to go back. Back to where it all began. Back to 23 years ago, when a young, beautiful Chioma Adeyemi first met Emeka Okonkwo, and when love, money, and betrayal first started weaving their deadly web. What would you have done if you were Adanna in that moment? Would you have stayed silent, or would you have intervened? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're already hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button because what's coming next will leave you speechless. 23 years earlier, the story began not in a mansion, but in a small accounting firm in Surulere, Lagos, where 22-year-old Chioma Adeyemi worked as a receptionist. She was beautiful, everyone said so. Her skin was smooth as shea butter, her smile could light up a room, and her curves were the kind that made men forget their own names. But beauty was all she had. Her father had been a taxi driver who died of malaria when she was 15. Her mother sold akra by the roadside to pay for Chioma's secondary school education. Chioma was hungry. Not for food but for everything food could buy. Respect. Power. A life where she never had to watch her mother's hands crack and bleed from frying bean cakes in hot oil before dawn. Emeka Okonkwo walked into that accounting firm on a Tuesday morning in March 1999, and Chioma knew immediately that he was her ticket out. He was 35, already wealthy from his father's oil connections, handsome in his tailored suits, and most importantly, he was single. His previous marriage had ended badly, people whispered. His wife had died in childbirth along with their baby. He hadn't looked at another woman in 3 years. Until Chioma. She made sure of it. The way she laughed at his jokes. The way she accidentally brushed against him when handing him files. The way she stayed late at the office. Always available, always attentive, always there. 6 months later, they were married in a ceremony that cost more than Chioma's entire neighborhood earned in a year. Her mother cried with joy. Chioma cried too, but for different reasons. She had won. She had escaped. What she didn't know was that Emeka's late wife, Ngozi, had a sister. A sister named Adiz who had loved Ngozi more than life itself. A sister who blamed Emeka for Ngozi's death, claiming he had forced her to get pregnant against medical advice. A sister who had sworn at Ngozi's funeral that the Okonkwo family would pay for their arrogance. But that was a storm still gathering on the horizon. For the first 5 years, the marriage was good. Emeka spoiled Chioma with cars, jewelry, trips to London and Dubai. They built the mansion in Ikoyi, hired staff, lived like royalty. But there was one problem. No children. Month after month, year after year, Chioma's womb remained empty. The whispers started. The side glances from Emeka's family. The suggestions that maybe Emeka should take a second wife, just to secure the family line. Chioma felt her position slipping. In Nigeria, a wife without children is a woman without power. She went to every hospital, every pastor, every babalawo. Nothing worked. Then came Amara. Amara was Emeka's secretary, a quiet girl from Owerri with gentle eyes and a kind smile. She had worked for Emeka for 2 years, efficient and invisible, exactly how good secretaries should be. Chioma noticed how Emeka looked at her. How he laughed more freely in her presence. How he came home later and later from the office. One night, Chioma hired a private investigator. What he discovered confirmed her worst fears. Emeka and Amara had been having an affair for 8 months. And worse, far worse, Amara was 3 months pregnant. The investigator handed Chioma photographs. Emeka and Amara at a hotel in Abuja. Emeka's hand on Amara's still flat stomach. Emeka looking at the secretary the way he had once looked at Chioma, back when she was a hungry receptionist with dreams bigger than her circumstances. That night, Chioma didn't sleep. She planned. She could divorce Emeka, but she would lose everything. Nigerian law and custom favored men, especially rich men. She could expose the affair, but that would only speed up the inevitable, Emeka marrying Amara and the child becoming his heir. She needed something else. Something permanent. 2 weeks later, Chioma invited Amara to the mansion for tea. She smiled warmly, touched Amara's hand, and spoke words that dripped with poisoned honey. "I know about the baby," Chioma said softly. "And I'm not angry. I can't give my husband children. You can. Maybe this is God's plan." Amara's eyes filled with tears of relief. She had been terrified, expecting rage, expecting to be fired, expecting her life to be destroyed. "But," Chioma continued, "we must be careful. Emeka's family cannot know the child isn't mine. They would never accept it. So here's what we'll do. You'll disappear. Go somewhere quiet. I'll pretend to be pregnant. When the time comes, I'll take the baby as my own. You'll be well paid. You can start a new life anywhere you want. Everyone wins." Amara was young. She was scared. She was in love with a man who had promised her nothing. She agreed. Chioma sent her to a house in Calabar, far from Lagos, far from everyone who knew her. She gave her money, a phone that only called Chioma's number, and a promise. But Chioma had no intention of keeping that promise. 6 months later, when Amara gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Chioma was there. She held the child, looked into his tiny face, and felt nothing. This baby represented everything she wasn't. Everything she had failed to be. "What will you name him?" Amara asked weakly from the hospital bed, her face glowing with new mother's love despite knowing she would have to give him up. "Chidi," Chioma said. "It means, God exists." Then she handed Amara a glass of water with medicine dissolved in it. "For the pain," she explained. Amara drank it gratefully. She fell asleep within minutes. She never woke up. The doctors called it postpartum complications. Tragic but not uncommon. There was no family to ask questions. Amara had been an orphan. The body was cremated quickly. Chioma returned to Lagos with baby Chidi. Emeka was overjoyed. His family celebrated. Finally an heir. Finally, proof that the Okonkwo name would continue. But Emeka knew the truth. He had loved Amara. He had promised to marry her after the baby came. And now she was dead, and his son was in the arms of a woman he was starting to fear. He said nothing. What could he say? He had been caught in his own web of lies. So he loved his son. He poured all his grief, all his guilt, all his lost love for Amara into raising Chidi. And Chioma watched, her smile perfect, her secrets buried deep. For 18 years they maintained the lie. They became Lagos's perfect power couple. Then came the accident. But was it really an accident? Or was it the beginning of karma's long, patient revenge? The accident happened on a rainy November night in 2020 on the 3rd Mainland Bridge. Emeka was driving home from a business dinner. The roads were slick with rain, the kind of heavy downpour that turns Lagos into a black, glittering maze. His Mercedes was built like a tank, German engineering at its finest. He should have been safe. But the brakes failed. At least, that's what the police report said. Brake failure. Tragic accident. The car spun out of control, crashed through the barrier, and plunged toward the lagoon below. Only a miracle, and the quick response of some fishermen who pulled him from the sinking car, saved Emeka's life. But the life they saved was broken. Shattered vertebrae. Severed nerves. The doctors said he would never walk again. The man who had controlled boardrooms and commanded respect now couldn't control his own legs. Chioma visited him in the hospital every day, playing the devoted wife for the cameras, for the family, for society. But when they were alone, her mask slipped. "This is your punishment," she whispered one night as he lay helpless in his hospital bed. "For Amara. For lying to me. For making me raise another woman's child as my own." Emeka's eyes widened. "You knew." "Of course I knew, you fool. I've always known. I arranged everything." Her smile was cold, triumphant. "And now look at you. Broken. Just like you broke me when you chose her over me." "Chioma, what did you do?" Emeka's voice was hoarse with horror. "The accident, the brakes." "Prove it," she hissed. "You can't. No one can. And even if you try, who will believe a crippled man over his devoted wife? I control everything now. Your businesses, your accounts, your life. You're nothing without me." But she was wrong. Emeka was many things, but he wasn't nothing. And as he lay in that hospital bed, he began to plan. 3 years passed. 3 years of humiliation. 3 years of Chioma's cruelty growing bolder. She took lovers openly, men half her age, spending Emeka's money on them. She signed contracts in his name, slowly bleeding his businesses dry, transferring assets to accounts Emeka couldn't access. And worst of all, she poisoned his relationship with Chidi. The boy, now 21 and in university, barely visited his father anymore. Chioma had filled his head with lies. "Your father is disappointed in you. Your father thinks you're weak. Your father doesn't want to see you because you remind him of his failures." None of it was true, but Chidi believed it. Young people always believe the parent who's present over the one who seems absent. Emeka's heart broke more every day than his body ever had. But then came Adanna. She was hired 3 months before that terrible morning when Chioma humiliated Emeka in front of her. 23 years old, fresh from Enugu, desperately sending money home to help her sick mother. She was quiet, hardworking, and most importantly, she had kind eyes. eyes that reminded Emeka of Amara. At first, he kept his distance. But slowly, carefully, he began to trust her. Small conversations. A thank you here. A genuine smile there. She treated him like a human being, not a broken thing to be pitied or mocked. And Adanna noticed things other staff missed because they had learned not to see. She noticed how Madam Chioma's boyfriend, a muscled young man named Tund, visited 3 times a week. She noticed how Madam would lock herself in the study for hours, working on documents she hid whenever anyone approached. She noticed the way Madam looked at Chief Emeka sometimes, not with hatred, but with fear. Fear meant secrets, and secrets meant power. 2 weeks before the incident with the wheelchair, Emeka called Adanna to his room late at night. She came nervously, knowing how it would look if anyone saw, but his message had been urgent. "Adanna, I need your help," he said quietly. "And I need to know if I can trust you." She should have said no. She should have walked away. She was just a maid. This wasn't her battle. But she thought of her own mother, sick and struggling back in Enugu. She thought of the cruelty she had witnessed in this house. She thought of the quiet dignity in this broken man's eyes. "What do you need, sir?" Emeka handed her a small recording device. "I need evidence. Of everything. Her affairs, her business dealings, her movements. I need proof of what she's done. Can you do this?" "Sir, if she finds out. I know the risk I'm asking you to take. I'll pay you 50,000 naira a week on top of your salary. And when this is over, if we succeed, I'll make sure you never have to work as a maid again. I'll pay for your mother's treatment. I'll send you to university if you want. But I need your help." 50,000 naira a week. That was more than Adanna made in 3 months. That could save her mother's life. That could change everything. She took the device. For 2 weeks, she recorded everything. Chioma's phone calls. Her meetings with lawyers. Her pillow talk with Tund where she bragged about how she had killed that secretary whore 18 years ago and gotten away with it. How she had paid a mechanic $20,000 to sabotage Emeka's brakes. How she was slowly poisoning Emeka with small doses of arsenic in his evening tea, not enough to kill him quickly, but enough to make him weaker, more confused, easier to control. Adanna's hands shook as she listened to the recordings each night. This woman was a monster. A murderer. And she was living free, laughing, spending money while the man she had destroyed sat helpless in his wheelchair. Then came the morning that changed everything. The morning Chioma pushed Emeka from his wheelchair. The morning Adanna placed the recording device on the floor where Emeka would fall, making it look accidental but ensuring the whole scene was captured. That night, Emeka called his lawyer, his oldest friend, Barrister Okafor. He called the police commissioner, whom he had known for 30 years. He called investigative journalists from 3 different newspapers. And he played them the recordings. 72 hours, he had said. In 72 hours, everything would come crashing down. But Chioma was not a woman who went down without a fight. On the second night after the wheelchair incident, Adanna was walking back to the servants' quarters when she was grabbed from behind. A cloth covered her mouth and nose, smelling of chemicals. The world went dark. When she woke up, she was in the trunk of a moving car, her hands tied, her mouth gagged. She could hear voices from the front seat. "Boss said to make it look like an accident," a man's voice said. "Throw her in the lagoon. Another poor village girl who came to Lagos and got lost. Nobody will ask questions." Adanna's heart hammered in her chest. She was going to die. Just like Amar. Just like all the others who got in Chioma's way. But what Chioma didn't know was that Emeka had already made copies of all the recordings. What she didn't know was that while she was ordering Adanna's death, police were already gathering evidence, getting warrants, building a case. And what she definitely didn't know was that Chidi, her beloved son who she thought was loyal only to her, had finally discovered the truth about his real mother. The truth that would make him choose sides in the war that was about to tear his family apart. Have you ever kept a dangerous secret for someone? Do you think Adanna was brave or foolish to help Chief Emeka? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like this video if you're as shocked as I was when I first heard this story. The car stopped. Adanna could hear water lapping against something, the distant sound of the Lagos lagoon at night. This was it. This was where she would die. The trunk opened. Two men stood above her, their faces covered with cloth masks. One of them grabbed her roughly, pulling her out. Her feet touched muddy ground. She could smell the rotting vegetation, the sewage, the death that already lived in these waters. "Please," she tried to say through the gag, but it came out as muffled sounds. "Nothing personal, small girl," one of the men said. "Just business." But before they could throw her in, headlights suddenly flooded the area. A car, moving fast, screeched to a stop. Doors flew open. "Police! Freeze!" The two men dropped Adanna and ran. Gunshots rang out in the night. Adanna fell to her knees, her whole body shaking, unable to process that she was alive. Strong hands untied her, removed her gag. When her vision cleared, she saw not police, but Chidi, Emeka's son. His face was twisted with rage and tears. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently. Adanna shook her head, too shocked to speak. Behind Chidi stood two actual police officers and Barrister Okafor. The lawyer looked grim. "We tracked her phone," Barrister Okafor explained. "Chief Emeka insisted we put a tracking device in all the staff phones after his accident. He knew Chioma would eventually go after anyone who threatened her." "My mother did this?" Chidi's voice broke on the word, mother. "She tried to kill an innocent girl?" "Your mother has done far worse," Barrister Okafor said quietly. "It's time you learned everything." That night, in Barrister Okafor's office, Chidi listened to the recordings. All of them. His face went from disbelief to horror to devastation as he heard Chioma's voice bragging about murdering Amara. His real mother. The woman whose name he had never known. "Amara," he whispered, testing the name on his tongue. "My mother's name was Amara." Emeka was there too, wheeled in by his private nurse. When Chidi looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in months, he saw his father not as the disappointment Chioma had painted him to be, but as a victim. A man who had lost everything, including his son's respect, because of one woman's lies. "I'm sorry," Chidi sobbed, falling to his knees beside his father's wheelchair. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I believed her. I thought you didn't love me. I thought." "Sure." Emeka placed a trembling hand on his son's head. "You didn't know. She made sure you didn't know. But now you do. Now we all do. And tomorrow, the whole world will know." But Chioma was always one step ahead. At that exact moment, while they were gathered in the lawyer's office, Chioma was at the mansion, setting it on fire. She had discovered that Emeka's lawyer had copies of the recordings. She had discovered that Adanna had escaped. She knew the walls were closing in. So she decided that if she was going down, she would burn everything to the ground. She started in Emeka's study, where he kept all his business documents, all the legal papers, all the evidence of the empire he had built. She poured petrol everywhere, watching it soak into the expensive carpets, the leather furniture, the family photographs on the walls. Then she moved to her own room, gathering her jewelry, her cash, her passport. She would run. She had accounts in Dubai that Emeka didn't know about. She had planned for this possibility, always had an escape route. But as she was packing, she found something that made her freeze. A letter. In Emeka's handwriting. Addressed to Chidi. Dated 3 years ago, right after the accident. Her hands shaking, she opened it. "My dear son, if you are reading this, then I am either dead or unable to speak for myself. There are things you need to know. Things about your real mother, Amar. Things about how you came to be. Things about the woman I married and the monster she became. I have failed you in so many ways. I failed your mother by not protecting her. I failed you by not being strong enough to tell you the truth. I failed myself by staying with a woman I feared instead of exposing her for what she was. But I want you to know that everything I did, every compromise I made, every humiliation I endured, was to keep you safe. Chioma would have destroyed you too if I had tried to leave or expose her. She told me as much. So I stayed. I documented everything. I waited. I loved your mother, Amar, more than I have ever loved anyone. She was kind, gentle, genuine. Everything good in you comes from her. When I look at you, I see her smile, her goodness, her light. Don't let Chioma's poison make you hard. Don't let her lies make you bitter. Be better than both of us. Be the man your mother would have been proud of. All my love, Chioma's hands crumpled the letter. Rage, pure and blinding, swept through her. After everything she had done, after all these years, Emeka still loved that dead secretary more than he had ever loved her. She had never been enough. Not for him. Not for anyone. That's when she heard the sirens. Police cars, fire trucks, approaching fast. Someone had seen the smoke already beginning to pour from the mansion windows. Chioma made a decision. If she couldn't have the life she had built, if she couldn't have Emeka's love, if she couldn't have anything, then no one would. She lit the match. The mansion erupted in flames so fast it seemed to explode. By the time the first fire truck arrived, the entire ground floor was engulfed. The firefighters worked frantically, but the fire was too hot, too widespread. And somewhere inside, Chioma was laughing. She stood in what used to be the master bedroom, surrounded by flames, holding the one thing she had grabbed before lighting the fire. A photograph from 23 years ago. Her wedding day. She had been so beautiful. Emeka had looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. When had that look died? When had she become this thing she now was? The smoke was thick now. She couldn't breathe. The heat was unbearable. But she didn't move toward the door. What was the point? Prison or death? Those were her only options now. She chose death. But fate or karma or God had other plans. A section of the ceiling collapsed, knocking her to the ground but not killing her. The fall sent her rolling toward the window, which shattered from the heat. Fresh air rushed in. Firefighters saw her, rushed forward with their ladder. They pulled her out, burned and unconscious, but alive. She woke up 3 days later in the hospital, bandaged from head to toe, handcuffed to the bed, with a police officer standing guard at her door. And standing at the foot of her bed, very much alive, was Emeka in his wheelchair, with Chidi beside him. "Hello, Chioma," Emeka said quietly. "We need to talk." The look in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. He had won. Finally, after all these years, he had won. And her nightmare was only just beginning. Chioma's voice was a rasp, damaged from smoke inhalation. "You should have let me burn. And give you an easy way out?" Emeka's voice was colder than she had ever heard it. "No, Chioma. You're going to face everything you've done. Every single thing." A lawyer entered the room, a woman in a sharp suit. She placed a briefcase on the table and pulled out a stack of documents. "Mrs. Okonkwo, my name is Barrister Adiz Obi. I represent the estate of the late Amara Namdi, and I have been waiting 18 years for this moment." Chioma's blood ran cold. "Obi? You're Ngozi's sister. Emeka's first wife. The woman you and this family destroyed." Adiz's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with years of controlled rage. "And also, I was Amara's closest friend. She told me everything before she went to Calabar. Everything about the baby. Everything about your promises." The room spun. Chioma tried to sit up, but the pain from her burns was excruciating. "When Amara died, I knew it wasn't natural," Adiz continued. "But I had no proof. I was a young lawyer back then, grieving my sister, grieving my friend. The Okonkwo family was too powerful. So I waited. I built my practice. I became one of the best criminal lawyers in Nigeria. And I waited for you to make a mistake." "You've been planning this for 18 years? Chioma whispered. "Justice doesn't have an expiration date." Adiz opened a folder. "We exhumed Amara's body last week. Even after all these years, arsenic leaves traces. The same arsenic we found in your bathroom cabinet. The same arsenic currently showing up in Chief Emeka's blood work." Chidi stepped forward, his face a mask of controlled fury. "You killed my mother. You've been slowly killing my father. And you almost killed Adanna. But for what? For everything." Chioma's voice broke into a scream that turned into a coughing fit. When she could speak again, tears were streaming down her burned face. "I came from nothing. Do you know what that's like? Watching your mother's hands bleed from hot oil? Wearing the same uniform to school for 3 years because there was no money for a new one? Being laughed at, pitted, dismissed. So you became a murderer?" Chidi's voice shook. I became a survivor. Chioma's eyes were wild now. Your father married me, but he never loved me. Not really. I was just the beautiful poor girl he could save, could shape into what he wanted. But Amara? That village secretary? He loved her. Really loved her. And I couldn't let that stand. I couldn't be second to a woman who had even less than I did. So you killed her, Emeka said softly. You killed an innocent woman and stole her child. I gave Chidi a better life than she ever could. Chioma shouted. I raised him in luxury, gave him everything. You gave me lies. Chidi's composure finally broke. Every birthday, every Christmas, every moment I called you mother, it was built on my real mother's grave. How am I supposed to live with that? The room fell silent except for Chioma's labored breathing. Adiz pulled out another document. There's more. We've been investigating your finances. Over the past 3 years, you've embezzled over 400 million naira from your husband's companies. You've forged his signature on contracts that have bankrupted 2 of his businesses. And you've transferred most of the stolen money to accounts in Dubai under your boyfriend Tun's name. Tund. Chioma laughed bitterly. That fool? He was just a distraction. Something to make me feel desired when my own husband could barely look at me. Well, your distraction is currently being very cooperative with the police, Adiz said. He's given us access to all those accounts in exchange for a reduced sentence. Apparently, loyalty only goes so far when prison time is involved. Chioma closed her eyes. It was over. Everything was over. There's something else you should know, Emeka said, wheeling closer to the bed. About the accident. About my brakes failing. I already told you I had them sabotaged, Chioma said tiredly. Add it to my list of crimes. Yes, you paid a mechanic named Ibrahim Hassan $20,000 to cut my brake lines. What you didn't know is that Ibrahim was arrested 2 months later for a different crime. He confessed to everything, including your contract on my life. The police have had that confession for 2.5 years. Chioma's eyes flew open. What? That's impossible. If they knew, why didn't they arrest me? Because I asked them not to. Emeka's smile was sad. I wanted to gather everything. Every crime. Every betrayal. I wanted to make sure that when justice came for you, it was complete. No technicalities. No escape routes. No mercy. You orchestrated all of this? From your wheelchair. Chioma couldn't believe it. Never underestimate what a man can do when he has nothing left to lose except his dignity and his son. Emeka looked at Chidi. I'm sorry you had to learn the truth this way. I'm sorry for all the lies, even the ones I told myself. But I promise you from this day forward, only truth. Chidi nodded, unable to speak. A police detective entered the room. Mrs. Okonkwo, I'm Detective Okafor. You're under arrest for the murders of Amara Namdi and the attempted murder of Chief Emeka Okonkwo and Miss Adanna Ease. You're also being charged with arson, embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent. Wait, Chioma interrupted. I want to make a statement. I want to tell you everything. But I have one condition. Everyone looked at her. I want to see Adanna. The girl. I want to apologize to her. Emeka and Adiz exchanged glances. Could be a trick. But Adanna, who had been waiting outside the hospital room, heard her name and stepped in before anyone could stop her. She looked small and frightened, her neck still bruised from where she had been grabbed, but she held her head high. You wanted to see me, madam? Chioma looked at this girl, this poor village girl who reminded her so much of herself at that age. Hungry, hopeful, trying to survive in a city that ate people alive. I'm sorry, Chioma whispered. Not for trying to kill you. I'm not that redeemed yet. But I'm sorry that I made you part of this. You were just trying to survive, just like I was once. And I almost destroyed you for it. Adanna stood silent for a moment, then said something that shocked everyone in the room. I forgive you, madam. Why? Chioma asked, genuinely confused. Because holding on to hate would make me like you. And I refuse to let your poison touch my soul. Adanna turned to Chief Emeka. Sir, with your permission, I'd like to go home to Enugu. My mother needs me. Of course, Emeka said. But Adanna, I made you a promise. Your mother's medical bills are paid for. And when you're ready, there's a university scholarship waiting for you. You saved my life. I don't forget debts like that. Adanna's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sir. As she turned to leave, Chioma called out one more time. Adanna? What will you study? At university? Law, Adanna said simply. So I can help other people who can't help themselves. After she left, Chioma laughed, a sound full of pain and irony. Of course, even my victims end up better than me. The police took her away that afternoon. The burns would heal in prison. But the weight of her crimes, the knowledge of all she had destroyed, would never heal. As the police van drove away, Emeka and Chidi stood in the hospital parking lot. What happens now, Dad? Chidi asked. Now. Emeka took a deep breath. Now we rebuild. The business. Our relationship. Our lives. It won't be easy. But for the first time in years, we're free to try. I want to know about her. About Amar. My real mother. Will you tell me? Everything, Emeka promised. Every memory, every moment, every reason I loved her. You deserve to know the woman who gave you life. Father and son sat there as the sun set over Lagos, finally, painfully, beginning to heal. But Chioma's story wasn't quite over yet. Because in prison, she would learn one final, devastating truth that would change everything she thought she knew about her life. Do you think Adanna was right to forgive Chioma? Could you have been that gracious? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed. Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison was everything Chioma had feared and worse. The smell of unwashed bodies, the constant noise, the cold concrete, the eyes of other inmates sizing her up, looking for weakness. She was no longer Madam Chioma Okonkwo, society wife, queen of Lagos social circles. She was prisoner 47839, accused murderer waiting for trial. The burns on her body had mostly healed, leaving angry scars across her arms and back. Physical reminders of the fire she had set, the life she had destroyed. Her lawyer, a court-appointed public defender named Barrister Musa, was sympathetic but realistic. Mrs. Okonkwo, the evidence against you is overwhelming. The recordings, the exhumed body, the financial records, the testimony from your accomplices. The best I can do is negotiate for life imprisonment instead of death penalty. Just do what you can, Chioma said flatly. She had accepted her fate. What else was there? 3 weeks into her imprisonment, she received an unexpected visitor. Her mother. Mama Adeyemi was 72 now, bent with age, her hands still rough from decades of frying akra. She hadn't seen her daughter since the arrest. The shame had been too much. They sat across from each other in the visitation room, separated by a scratched plastic barrier, speaking through phones. Mama, Chioma's voice broke. Despite everything, despite being a murderer, despite being a monster, she was still her mother's daughter. Chioma, Mama Adeyemi's eyes were red from crying. What did you do? What did you become? I became exactly what you raised me to be, Mama. You told me to marry rich. You told me beauty was my only weapon. You told me to do whatever it took to escape poverty. So I did. Mama Adeyemi flinched as if struck. I never told you to kill. I never told you to destroy innocent people. Didn't you? Chioma's laugh was bitter. Every story you told me as a child was about clever women who tricked their way to better lives. Every lesson was about survival at any cost. You just never expected the cost to be this high. I was wrong, Mama Adeyemi whispered. I was so afraid of poverty, so afraid of suffering, that I taught you to fear it too. And that fear made you into this. She paused, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. But I came here to tell you something. Something I should have told you 23 years ago. What, Mama? Emeka's first wife, Ngozi. The one who died in childbirth. Mama Adeyemi took a shaky breath. She was your half-sister. The world stopped. What did you say? Chioma whispered. Your father, the taxi driver I told you died of malaria? That was a lie. His real name was Chief Okonkwo, Emeka's father. Chioma felt like she was drowning. No. No, that's impossible. When I was young, I worked as a housemaid for the Okonkwo family. Chief Obinna forced himself on me. I got pregnant with you. His wife, Emeka's mother, threw me out. Gave me money to disappear and never speak the name Okonkwo again. I took the money. I raised you alone. I never told you because I was ashamed. So Emeka is my half-brother. Yes. Mama Adeyemi's voice was hollow. When you told me you were marrying Emeka Okonkwo, I should have stopped you. I should have told you the truth. But I was so happy you were escaping poverty, so relieved you would have the life I never could give you. I convinced myself it didn't matter, that the Okonkwo family owed us anyway for what they did to me. Chioma's mind was racing. Does Emeka know? No. I never told anyone except you, right now. The Okonkwo family wanted me erased from their history. And I let them. So I married my own brother, Chioma said slowly, horror dawning. Chidi is not just Amara's son. He's the product of… She couldn't finish the sentence. No, Mama Adeyemi said quickly. Emeka is only your half-brother. Different mothers. The marriage was wrong, morally complicated, but not technically incest. And Chidi is not your blood. He's Amara's son completely. But the damage was done. Everything Chioma thought she knew about her life was a lie. The family she had married into was the same family that had destroyed her mother. The man she had hated for not loving her was her own half-brother. The sister-wife whose memory she had competed against, Ngozi, was her own half-sister. And she had never known. Never suspected. Why are you telling me this now? Chioma asked, her voice dead. Because you need to understand that the poison in your life started long before you. The Okonkwo family's sins, my silence, the secrets and lies, they all created the soil where your evil grew. Mama Adeyemi pressed her hand against the plastic barrier. But that doesn't excuse what you did. You still made choices. You still killed. You still destroyed. The reasons don't erase the crimes. Does this mean anything for my case? Can I use this? Use what? That you unknowingly married your half-brother? How does that excuse murdering an innocent woman? Mama Adeyemi shook her head. No, my daughter. This information won't save you from justice. I'm telling you so you can understand. So maybe in whatever time you have left, you can find some kind of peace with the truth. But there was no peace. Only more pain. After her mother left, Chioma sat in her cell, staring at the wall. Everything she had fought for, everything she had killed for, was built on a foundation of lies that went back a generation. The Okonkwo family had wronged her mother, so in some twisted way, hadn't she been justified in taking what they owed? Hadn't she been reclaiming what should have been hers by blood? Even as the thought formed, she knew it was wrong. Amara had nothing to do with any of it. Adanna had nothing to do with any of it. They were innocent, and she had destroyed them anyway. A week later, Barrister Adiz came to see her. I know, Adiz said simply, sitting down across from Chioma. Your mother told me everything before she told you. She thought I should know as Ngozi's sister. So Ngozi was my half-sister, Chioma said. Did you tell Emeka? No. And I don't intend to. That secret would destroy him. Learning that his first wife and his second wife were half-sisters? That the family's sins are even darker than he knew? What purpose would it serve? The truth always serves a purpose, Chioma said bitterly. Does it? Look where truth brought you. Look where lies brought you. Maybe some truths are meant to die with the people who carry them. Adiz leaned forward. I came to offer you something. A deal. What kind of deal? Plead guilty to all charges. Give a full confession. Show genuine remorse. In exchange, I'll recommend to the judge that you receive life imprisonment instead of death penalty. And I'll make sure you're sent to a prison with a decent medical facility where you can serve your time with some measure of dignity. Why would you do that for me? Not for you. For Chidi. He's been through enough. A long, public trial where every detail of his parentage, his mother's death, your crimes are paraded in front of the media? It would destroy him. But if you plead guilty, we can close this quickly. He can begin to heal. Chioma thought of Chidi, the boy she had raised, had lied to, had poisoned against his own father. He wasn't her blood, but she had spent 21 years as his mother. Somewhere beneath all the hatred and bitterness, there had been moments of genuine love. Hadn't there? If I do this, will you tell him something for me? What? Tell him that in my own twisted, broken way, I did love him. Tell him that every bad thing I did was because I was trying to hold on to something, anything, in a world where I felt I had nothing. Tell him I'm sorry that my love was so poisoned that it hurt him. Chioma's voice cracked. Tell him he deserves better than both his mothers gave him. Me and Amara. We both failed him in different ways. Adiz nodded slowly. I'll tell him. 2 days later, Chioma stood in court and pled guilty to all charges. She confessed everything. The murder of Amara. The attempted murder of Emeka. The embezzlement. The arson. The attempted murder of Adanna. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Folake Williams, looked at Chioma with disgust and pity in equal measure. Mrs. Chioma Okonkwo, you have committed crimes that shock the conscience. You have taken life, destroyed families, and betrayed every trust placed in you. However, in light of your guilty plea and cooperation, and considering the recommendation of the prosecution, I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The gavel came down. Chioma felt nothing. No relief. No despair. Just emptiness. As they led her away, she saw Emeka in the courtroom, sitting in his wheelchair. Their eyes met for just a moment. He nodded once, a gesture of finality. This was closure. This was the end. But for Chidi, for Adanna, for everyone whose lives Chioma had touched, it was not an ending. It was a chance at a new beginning. 2 years later, Lagos had not forgotten the Okonkwo scandal. How could it? The story had everything Nigerians loved: wealth, betrayal, murder, and a spectacular fall from grace. The newspapers had run with it for months. Social media had dissected every detail. It became the cautionary tale mothers told their daughters about the dangers of ambition without conscience. But for those who had lived through it, life had moved on in ways both painful and redemptive. Adanna stood in front of the University of Lagos Faculty of Law building, her acceptance letter clutched in her hand. She was 25 now, older than most of her classmates would be, but she didn't care. She had worked for this. After leaving Lagos 2 years ago, she had returned to Enugu and nursed her mother back to health with the money Chief Emeka had provided. Her mother was strong now, running a small provisions shop that Emeka had helped her start. Adanna had studied day and night for her JAM exams, determined to fulfill the promise she had made to herself in that hospital room. Law school. She was going to be a lawyer. Adanna! She turned to see a familiar figure approaching. Chidi, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, looking nothing like the privileged rich boy he had once been. He was smiling, but there was a sadness in his eyes that never quite went away. Chidi, what are you doing here? I'm starting my master's degree. Social work. I want to help young people who are caught between families and circumstances they didn't choose. He gestured to the campus around them. Looks like we'll be schoolmates. They walked together to a nearby cafeteria, catching up on the 2 years since they had last seen each other. Chidi told her about his father. Emeka had sold most of his businesses and was now focused on philanthropy. He had started a foundation in Amara's name, providing scholarships for young girls from poor backgrounds who wanted to pursue education. He's different now, Chidi said. Lighter somehow. Like he's finally free from carrying all those secrets. We talk every day. He tells me stories about my mother, about who she was, what she loved. I'm getting to know her through his memories. And how are you doing with all of it? Adanna asked gently. Chidi was quiet for a moment. Some days are harder than others. I think about the woman I called mother for 21 years, and I don't know what to feel. Pity? Grief? All of it at once. He stirred his coffee absently. I visited her. In prison. 3 months ago. You did? Adanna was surprised. I needed to. I needed to look her in the eye and ask her why. Why she killed my mother. Why she lied to me my whole life. He paused. She apologized. Said she knew it meant nothing, but she wanted me to hear it anyway. She looked so small, Adanna. So broken. Not like the powerful woman I grew up fearing and trying to please. Did it help? Seeing her? Yes and no. It gave me closure, but it also made me realize that she was broken long before she broke everyone else. Her mother told me things about the Okonkwo family, about cycles of pain that go back generations. He looked at Adanna. I decided I'm going to be the one who breaks the cycle. No more secrets. No more lies. No more using people and throwing them away. Adanna reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Your mother, Amara, would be proud of the man you're becoming. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, then Chidi asked, Have you forgiven her? Chioma, you said you did in the hospital, but has that held up? Adanna thought carefully. Forgiveness isn't something that happens once. It's something you choose every day. Some days I remember her men grabbing me, putting me in that trunk, and I feel the anger all over again. Other days I remember that she was once a girl like me, desperate and scared, and I feel sad for what she could have been. But I refuse to let her choices make me bitter. That's my forgiveness. Choosing not to let her poison touch my future. You're wise beyond your years, Chidi said with genuine admiration. I had good teachers. Your father, Barrister Adiz, even Chioma in her own twisted way. She showed me exactly who I don't want to become. Across town, in Kirikiri prison, Chioma sat in the library reading a book. She had changed in 2 years. Her hair was completely gray now, cut short and practical. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced with prison uniform. The manicured nails were broken and bare. But something else had changed too. Something in her eyes. A kind of clarity that came from having nothing left to lose, nothing left to hide. She had started a program in the prison, teaching young female inmates to read and write. Many of them were like her, poor girls who had made terrible choices out of desperation. She couldn't undo her own crimes, but maybe she could prevent some of them from going down the same path. A guard approached. Chioma, you have a visitor. She wasn't expecting anyone. Chidi's last visit had been months ago, and he had made it clear it would be his last. Her mother had died 6 months ago, taking her secrets to the grave. When she entered the visitation room, she was shocked to see Emeka. He sat in his wheelchair, older now, more gray, but his eyes were clearer than she had seen them in years. They picked up the phones on either side of the plastic barrier. Why are you here? Chioma asked. Closure, Emeka said simply. I've been carrying hatred for you for so long. It was eating me alive. I realized that keeping you in my head, staying angry, was just another way of letting you control my life. So I came to let you go. Let me go, Chioma repeated. After everything I did to you? After everything we did to each other, Emeka corrected. Yes, you were cruel. You were a murderer. You destroyed lives. But I wasn't innocent either. I married you when I didn't love you. I had an affair. I kept secrets. I could have been honest years ago and prevented so much pain. We were both wrong, Chioma. Just in different ways. Chioma felt tears streaming down her face. I killed Amara. I don't deserve your forgiveness. No, you don't. But I'm not giving it to you for your sake. I'm giving it to myself, so I can finally be free. He paused. Adiz told me what your mother said. About Chief Obinna. About Ngozi being your half-sister. Chioma's eyes widened. She told you? She thought I had a right to know. And maybe she was right. It explains so much. The anger you carried. The feeling that the family owed you something. But Chioma, those sins were not yours to avenge. Amara wasn't responsible for what my father did to your mother. You punished the wrong people. I know, Chioma whispered. I know that now. But knowing it doesn't bring her back. Doesn't undo anything. No, it doesn't. But maybe it can help you understand yourself. Help you find some kind of peace in here. Emeka wheeled closer to the barrier. I won't come back again. This is goodbye, Chioma. Really, truly goodbye. I hope you find a way to live with what you've done. I hope you find a way to do some good with whatever years you have left. Not for me. Not for redemption. But because every day you have is a day Amara didn't get. Don't waste them. He hung up the phone and wheeled away. Chioma watched him go, This man who had been her husband, her brother, her victim, her enemy. And she realized that he was right. He was free now. Finally, completely free of her. She went back to her cell and wrote in the journal her prison therapist had given her. Today Emeka came. Today he let me go. I don't deserve his forgiveness, but he gave it anyway, not as a gift to me but as a release for himself. I understand now what I could never understand before. That holding on to bitterness, to grudges, to the belief that the world owes you something, it only destroys you from the inside. I cannot undo what I have done. Amara is still dead. Emeka is still broken. Adanna still has nightmares. Chidi still struggles with his identity. These are my legacies and I must live with them. But I can choose what I do with my remaining years. I can teach these girls to read. I can listen to their stories. I can be the warning of what happens when ambition becomes poison. Maybe that's my punishment. Not death. Not even life in prison. But life knowing exactly what I destroyed and why, and having to wake up every day and choose to be better anyway. It's not redemption. I don't deserve that. But maybe it's responsibility. 6 months later, Adanna gave her first oral argument in moot court. It was about a fictional case involving a woman accused of murdering her husband's mistress. As she argued the defense, carefully navigating the complexities of motive, opportunity, and reasonable doubt, she felt the weight of her own experience informing every word. Chidi sat in the audience watching her, proud of how far she had come. After the argument, they went for lunch. "You were brilliant," he said. "I had good motivation. Every time I argue a case, I think about justice. Real justice. Not revenge. Not cruelty. But actual accountability and restoration." She smiled. "Your mother's foundation is helping me pay for school. Did I tell you that?" "Which mother?" Chidi asked with dark humor. "Amara. The scholarship is in her name. It feels right somehow. Like she's still helping people even though she's gone." "I like to think she is," Chidi said softly. "I like to think that all the pain, all the tragedy, somehow gets transformed into something good. That Adanna Ease, the village girl who almost died for doing the right thing, becomes Barrister Adanna Ease, defender of the powerless. That feels like the kind of justice my mother would have wanted." They talked until sunset, two young people forever bonded by trauma but determined not to be defined by it. Meanwhile, in a small physical therapy center in Lekki, Emeka Okonkwo stood up from his wheelchair. It wasn't much. Just a few shaky steps with the support of parallel bars and his therapist's encouragement. But it was something. After years of being told he would never walk again, after accepting his fate, his body was slowly, painfully, fighting its way back. "Excellent, Chief Emeka," his therapist, a young woman named Chioma, cheered. "5 steps today. Last week it was 3. Emeka smiled, exhausted but triumphant. "You know what the doctors say. Miracles happen when you least expect them. Or when you work hard enough for them," Chioma corrected with a grin. That evening, Emeka called Chidi and told him about the progress. His son's joy over the phone made every painful step worth it. "Dad, I'm so proud of you. Will you walk at my graduation?" "That's 2 years away. If I keep this pace, I'll be running marathons by then," Emeka joked. Then, more seriously, "Son, I want you to know something. These past 2 years, rebuilding our relationship, learning to be honest with each other, it's been the best thing in my life. Better than any business deal. Better than any achievement. You are my legacy. Not money. Not companies. You." "I love you too, Dad," Chidi said, his voice thick with emotion. After they hung up, Emeka sat in his study, looking at the photograph he kept on his desk. Amara, young and smiling, from 23 years ago. He touched the frame gently. "Our son is going to be fine," he whispered to the photograph. "He's strong like you were. Kind of like you were. And he's going to help people, break cycles of pain, make the world a little better. That's your legacy, Amara. Not the tragedy of how you died, but the triumph of what your son is becoming." He put the photograph down and picked up another one. This one was new, taken just last week. Him and Chidi at the Foundation's scholarship ceremony, presenting awards to 5 young girls from poor backgrounds. Everyone was smiling. This was his life now. Not perfect. Still painful some days. But honest. Moving forward instead of being trapped in the past. In her prison cell, Chioma heard about Emeka's progress through one of the guards who had read about it in the newspaper. The miracle of Chief Okonkwo, the headline read. Paralyzed businessman learning to walk again. She should have felt jealous. Angry. Bitter that even in his brokenness, he was finding victory while she rotted in prison. But instead she felt something unexpected. Relief. If Emeka could walk again, maybe it meant that healing was possible. Maybe it meant that even the worst damage didn't have to be permanent. She couldn't walk out of prison. She couldn't undo her crimes. But maybe, just maybe, she could heal in her own way. She went to her next therapy session and for the first time, she talked honestly about her mother. About poverty. About the fears that had driven her. About the moment she had decided that survival was worth any cost, including murder. Her therapist, Dr. Amina, listened without judgment. You can't change the past, Chioma. But you can change how you respond to it. You can choose to let it destroy you, or you can choose to let it teach you. Teach me what? That you're not the first person to be hurt by the world. And that choosing to hurt others in response only creates more pain. The cycle only stops when someone chooses to absorb the pain instead of passing it on. Chioma thought about that for days. Absorbing pain instead of passing it on. That's what Adanna had done by forgiving her. That's what Emeka had done by letting her go. That's what Chidi was doing by choosing social work instead of bitterness. Maybe that's what she needed to do too. Absorb the consequences of her actions. Stop blaming her mother, Chief Obinna, the Okonkwo family, poverty, society. Just accept that she had made choices, terrible choices, and now she had to live with them without making excuses. It wasn't redemption, but it was responsibility. And maybe that was enough. 5 years after the trial, Adanna graduated from law school with honors. Chidi was there, cheering louder than anyone. So was Emeka, walking slowly with a cane but walking nonetheless. Barrister Adiz was there too, pride shining in her eyes for this young woman she had watched grow from terrified maid to confident lawyer. At the celebration dinner, Emeka stood, leaning on his cane, to make a toast. To Adanna. You could have walked away. You could have stayed silent. You could have let fear win. But you chose courage. You chose justice. You saved my life, but more than that, you showed all of us what integrity looks like. I have no doubt you're going to be an extraordinary lawyer. But more importantly, you're already an extraordinary human being. Everyone raised their glasses. Adanna cried happy tears. Later that night, alone in her apartment, she thought about the journey. From village girl to maid to witness to law school graduate. She thought about Chioma, still in prison, still serving her sentence. She thought about Amara, whose death had set all of this in motion. And she thought about karma. Not the dramatic, instant karma of movies, but the slow, steady karma of consequences. The way cruelty eventually caught up with the cruel. The way kindness eventually blessed the kind. The way truth, no matter how long it took, always found its way to the light. Chioma had humiliated her crippled husband before the maid. She had thought herself untouchable, powerful, above consequences. But karma had been watching, taking notes, building a case. And when karma finally hit, it hit with the full force of justice delayed but not denied. Adanna opened her laptop and started typing. She was writing a book, her story, not for fame or money, but for all the other poor girls in Nigeria who thought they had to compromise their integrity to survive. She wanted them to know, there is another way. It's harder. It takes longer. But it doesn't cost your soul. She titled the first chapter, The Day I Saw Evil and Chose to Stand Against It. As she wrote, she could almost feel Amara's spirit smiling down on her, proud of this girl who had honored her memory not with revenge, but with righteousness. The story of the Okonkwo family would be told for generations in Lagos. A cautionary tale. Tragedy. A scandal. But it was also something else. A testimony that no matter how dark the night, morning always comes. That no matter how powerful the wicked seem, justice is patient and has a long memory. That karma doesn't forget. It just waits for the perfect moment to strike. Chioma had learned this the hard way. And now she had the rest of her life to teach others the lesson she had paid so dearly to learn, that wickedness, no matter how carefully planned, eventually destroys the wicked most of all. So what did you think? Do you believe in karma? Have you seen wickedness punished in your own life? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel because we bring you the most powerful, emotional, real-life African stories every week. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, that justice may be delayed, but it's never denied. Thank you for watching, and remember, always choose integrity over ambition, truth over convenience, and kindness over cruelty. Until next time.